Dear Mr. President.
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 History or progress? May 25th, 2020. George Floyd was killed in the streets of Minneapolis by a white police officer. The footage shown here spread like wildfire.
The Black Lives Matter movement was suddenly trending all over the world. Literally.
First of all, let me give a shout out to Black Lives Matter. Mm-hmm. I happen to think that those young people have essentially...
Black Lives Matter, we matter. First act like I matter. I'm not some object to be analyzed.
It's actually a function of systems that are designed intentionally to criminalize and punish Black people and people of color.
I can't tell you the kind of pain you feel when you watch something like that. When you watch your big brother, who you looked up to your whole entire life, die begging for his mom, I'm tired.
Peaceful protests broke out in support of BLM. Protests soon turned into riots.
The awareness of the systematic racism in America gave way to change. Monuments glorifying racist figures were taken down, and students became aware of how these same bigoted historic individuals were imprinted on their schools.
One of these schools was ours, T.C. Williams High School.
When I first heard about the Rename TC movement, I heard about a group of students who were wanting to cover up the sign, and that's why I felt like I needed to step forward and take action rather than staying a bystander. I think it's really important not to celebrate somebody who had such a negative impact on so many students' lives.
TC was named after Thomas Chambliss Williams.
T.C. Williams was a leader in the school system who actively fought integration of the schools.
The renaming of TC began with a petition that came shortly after George Floyd's death.
In fact, there were two petitions. As it turns out, TC wasn't the only school in Alexandria on track to be renamed.
The school in question, Matthew Murray Elementary School.
Matthew Fontaine Maury, known as the father of modern oceanography, joined the Confederacy shortly after the outbreak of the Civil War.
Our high school has worn TC's name since the 1960s, and Matthew Murray, it's been called that since the 1920s.
The students, teachers, and community members of Alexandria decided it was time for a change, and this time, we would be involved.
Community involvement was key for the renaming of TC project.
In November of 2020, the Alexandria City School Board voted unanimously to rename T.C. Williams High School, as well as Matthew Maury Elementary School.
But not everyone was happy with this decision. One argument frequently used to defend the name of TC is that there's history behind it, namely, the movie made about our school.
Some argue that by changing the name, we would be erasing the rich history behind TC, and this movie in particular.
Another argument used against the renaming of TC is cost.
And they wouldn't be wrong.
3 public schools in Portsmouth will have new names next year.
The 3 schools combined could tally up around $440,000.
But for $423 and change, what else are we going to have to cut in order to get that done?
Regardless of any reason why T.C. Williams or Matthew Maury shouldn't be renamed, it's happening.
However, the renaming of schools wasn't the only thing that came after George Floyd's murder.
On the intersection of Prince and Washington Street in Old Town, Alexandria, stood a 131-year-old Confederate statue. The statue, titled Appomattox, depicts a southern-facing Civil War soldier.
Council had actually voted several years ago to pursue movement of the statue. We were expecting them to move it shortly after July 1. They asked for permission to take it down early, and we said, fine, take it down.
The United Daughters of the Confederacy, who own the statue, opted to remove the memorial early because of demonstrations nationwide in which statues, just like this one, have been vandalized or forcefully removed.
Our city isn't the only one that still has monuments memorializing Confederate symbols, but not everyone takes them down for a number of reasons.
What the travesty is that this is a part of our nation's overall history.
Black men identifying as either conservative, black conservative, or simply Republican say the monument should stay with added footnotes to history.
We personally believe that statues, just like the Appomattox, should be taken down. As history changes and progresses, so should we. We shouldn't memorialize figures that stood for things that we no longer believe in.
And this is why we think it's incredibly important for the new presidential administration to address topics like this. We still see racist symbolism in our streets, schools, and even monuments. Youth voices should be heard on issues like this. It's important now more than ever.
Fostering leadership and empowering youth voices is the way we promote, good citizenship and combat cynicism.
I think we should choose a better person or name to reflect to who our school really is. I live about a block from that statue. It was mourning the losses of Confederate soldiers. We should have kept the statue. It was respectful.
We should be teaching students how to speak up for themselves, how to have an independent voice, and how to fight things that they believe are wrong.
So, we'll leave you with this question. When it comes to outdated beliefs promoted by racist representation through our monuments, schools, and statues, which will you choose? History or progress?